Welcome to the Empathy Avengers podcast, where we put empathy into action.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Empathy Avengers podcast. Today, we are bringing you the year in review for 2025 from the Empathy Avengers. So, let's get started.
First up was our very first episode with our own Empathy Avenger, Alexa Casey. Alexa is a bona fide psychologist, and she was really helpful and instrumental in kicking off our podcast because she was able to help us dive into all the different terms that we might hear in the media and that we might be talking about certain people who are in our administration and what it all means and like how to penetrate and how to stay sane ourselves during the whole thing. So let's check out the first promo we have.
Empathy allows us to stand up for things like democracy, not only stand up for it, but act in a way that promotes not just one's self-interest, but others' interests. So the dark empathy relates to using that against another person in some ways.
Understanding that all of the projection stuff that they do, and now that I fully realize that everything they do is projection, and the dark empathy they're basically attacking us with our own feelings of compassion, and that as long as we're aware of that, it's just so much easier to kind of navigate this. And every time you hear the news, you know it's something that's trying to trigger you, and you just don't let it happen. You just let it roll off your back, right? And I think that, yeah, that was instrumental. One of the best episodes we had, I think, and so great to kick off our podcast.
Alexa is incredible, and she is a true on-the-ground activist. She's just started working with the Democratic Party in Virginia to overturn one of the Senate seats there. So she is just an absolute inspiration of how we can use empathy to protect our democracy. In our second episode, gosh, we were so honored to have Jen Sanko, who is the creator of the film The Brainwashing of My Dad, which tells the story of how her dad was radicalized through right-wing media and right-wing radio, especially Rush Limbaugh. Jen is incredible. She and her mom is now 105, basically ran an op on her dad to bring him back, to bring back the good man that was still inside of him. So let's hear how it started, which is just such a simple thing.
My parents moved to a senior community, and somehow in that move, his radio broke. Rush Limbaugh lunches, and he chilled a little. My parents started enjoying lunch together again. Still got the email and snail mail and watched Fox in the afternoon. A couple months after, their old TV in the kitchen conked out and they got a new one. My mother loved programming remotes. He didn't bother trying to figure out how to get Fox. Just watch the news she had on. He was getting more agreeable and even sending less emails.
Yeah, I mean, she was so inspiring. I mean, she had seen all of this and did all of this, and the film even she put out in 2015. So it was way before the Orange Man ever ascended into politics. But she saw the writing on the wall. She saw the tactics that were being used, this Russian right-wing propaganda, Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, a lot of the media pundits, now they're podcasters, but she was able to fix him. Which I love, and they just did it by removing the source. And so that's the punchline,
100%.
but everybody can do it.
Our friend Jim Stewartson often says the only way to reverse brainwashing of someone is to remove the source of the brainwashing, like you just said. And I know for myself, when I was in the mega church in Texas that became a QAnon church, I definitely saw folks had a very insular information system. It was Fox News, Facebook, and the church. Like, that was it. And so it's no wonder that people end up like Jen's dad and then end up struggling with the cognitive dissonance of what is real, what is not. I'm hearing all of this propaganda and rage factory all the time. But the fact that she was able to end that film with hope. And, the fact that her dad, even though he's now passed, did end his life back to the good, sweet man he seemed to be.
Yeah, what a great success story. So definitely check out episode 2 with Jen Senko. And she talks about making the documentary, The Brainwashing of My Dad.
Yeah.
So next up, we had Eric Mosley, who's a veteran, and he was a pilot, a counselor, and now he's an activist out there on the front lines in the resistance. And Eric was really interesting because he kind of, I mean, for lack of a better word, he sort of epitomized what I think of as the bad guys, the white male, older patriarchy. It was so refreshing to hear Eric talking about democracy in such an urgent and empowered way. And Eric had some amazing insights for us. So let's check out his clip here.
The empathy wall is here's the right and here's the left. And over here on the left, we can empathize with people in our group, and conservatives over here, they can empathize with people in their group. But there's this wall that prevents empathy from getting through to either side, right? And
Yeah.
so she wanted to bridge the empathy, what she saw as an empathy wall. I thought that was a beautiful description.
That term empathy wall, Trump did build that wall after all. It's infuriating for those of us who are on the side of reality of that wall to try to bust through it. It feels like we're just beating away against a solid rock of granite sometimes. But those little glimmers of hope, I got out. It is possible for people to bridge that gap and to climb over that wall and reach other people. It takes a hell of a lot of patience, a lot of hard work, but it is possible.
Definitely. Don't give up.
Right, exactly. Do not give up. So for episode 4, we talked about internet trolls and how to stay safer online. Hi-Fi from the Radicalized Truth Survives podcast joined us, along with our friend Normie Joe, who is an IT specialist, and boy, did they have some words of wisdom for us.
Data ages out, and here's what we need to do. People need to start recognizing that their data is their security, their data is their privacy, their data is their lives. Stop sharing it with your applications. Stop sharing it on your phone. Share it with your friends and your close family, but stop putting it up on. The world does not need to see pictures of your kids. If you want to send them to friends and family, that's one thing. But even your email, if you're using a Gmail account, guess what? That's getting scanned, right? You're using an Apple iCloud account, guess what? That's getting scanned. People need to understand, and even more so, our federal government needs to understand that the data of its citizens is a national security issue. And until such time as that is considered, we're all at risk.
I learned so much from those guys. It was really, really important and informative to fully appreciate how all of this tech is working and how it's manipulating our mind, because that's how they're doing it. And they're coming after us. And the more we are on our phones and our social media platforms, the more susceptible we are to this influence. And I mean, although we at Empathy Avengers are trying to put out positive content and to kind of counterbalance that, it's just so important for all of us to make sure that we're fully appreciating when we're spending time on those platforms, we know what's actually happening to us so that we can make sure that we, stay normal and don't let this stuff impact us.
Absolutely. And, Hi-Fi's point about our government needs to treat this as a national security emergency. They're definitely not doing that. Trump dismantled I think the Office of Cybersecurity on day 1 of his second administration. So yeah, Hi-Fi and Normie Joe, just so lucky to learn from them and their wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, check out episode 4, Internet Trolls. Next up for episode 5, we had Dee Batiste. This was such a pleasure to meet Dee, who is an activist and doing a lot of community organizing out in Tennessee, which we learned from her has this horrible trifecta of GOP, and therefore they pretty much do whatever they want. So it takes people like Dee to help get the public to fully appreciate what's going on and to do activism locally. And that was the big take home message from Dee.
Something really important that Dee said during that episode is that it's not her job to educate you. It is not the Black woman's job to educate you about the Tulsa Massacre. I've often been struck with how embarrassed I am by my whitewashed public history education. I didn't learn about Juneteenth until I moved to Texas in 2000. I didn't learn about the Tulsa Massacre until around 2020 or so. And it's crazy that our blinders have been put on as far as race in this country, and it's refreshing for Dee to address it head on.
That's what happens when everyone's voice isn't heard and represented. That's how I was able to see, just again at the local level, community-wise, how if you're not civically engaged, you lose your voice, you lose your power, and it's very hard to get it back.
The most important thing for me, the messages from Dee, was to get active locally. I mean, I'm in California, even in Los Angeles, so I always feel like I'm in such a blue bubble that I should try to work nationally, which is why I hang out with my Empathy Avengers all over the country. But I should not neglect, we have, even here in blue Los Angeles, we have some pockets of conservatism, and people infiltrate the city councils and the board of education and stuff like that. So I need to be more diligent myself about making sure that I help do my activism here locally as well. I mean, I'm in LA and we have ICE raids all the time, every other day, it feels. And still people are getting picked up. So I want to, in 2026, I'm going to be more of an activist locally. And that's thanks to Dee's advice.
Yeah, balance is key. We have our online community, which I think is essential. But, I'm in a blue bubble too. I'm in New Haven, but I have the honor of serving as a poll worker. So, yeah, we've got to have that balance. Absolutely. And Dee is she's a perfect example of that. I really admire her.
Yes.
Episode 6, we were joined by Zarina Zabritsky. We had watched her brilliant film, Kherson Human Safari, in a part of our Movies with Meaning, and had a conversation with her. And man, we cannot look away from what's happening in Ukraine. The people are incredible fighters, but they need our support, and Zarina really highlights that for us.
The way I saw it when I was in the auditorium with all the Ukrainians, all the Khersonians, they were all crying. They were big men. For them, it wasn't inspiring or warm. It was reliving all those horrors again and again. And at the time it was over, I felt horrible because I felt that on top of everything they already enduring, I inflicted more pain. And so when the time came to speak, I couldn't speak. I apologized to them. They said, "Thank you for doing this. This film needs to be seen. We want this film."
Yeah. Wow. I was so moved to tears, inspired by the resilience. I mean, I just don't even understand how these people are still going. They're still gathering together to, have arts, read poetry, and have solidarity. And it just breaks my heart to even think about how they've been going through this for almost 4 years now. And it's got to stop. And I just don't see this administration doing anything to help them. So I agree. We cannot look away. We need Europe to step up until the United States gets back on our feet. But, Ukraine can't wait that long. They just don't have that much time left. And we need to step up because they are the victims here.
100%. And, the 28-point peace plan that Steve Witkoff brought up to Ukraine, there's really just one simple peace point that they need. Russia needs to get the fuck out of Ukraine, and then there will be peace.
Yeah. Moving right along, episode 7 featured Heidi Sigmund Kuda, who is an Emmy-winning journalist, and she has been writing about all these amazing topics for years. I only have recently came across her since I've been part of the Empathy Avengers, and I am so impressed with her collaborative spirit, her knowledge, and her ability to kind of just really cut to the chase and bring it right to what you need to hear. So let's hear a clip from her.
Without empathy, without truth, without kindness, without a sense of community, without the basic golden rules of loving our neighbors and doing unto others, we are really opening ourselves up for basically the end of the world as we know it. We need all those things. Those are things that actually government, when it's functional, helps with. It's those safety nets that we rely on. So people don't have to lose everything. And so right now we have billionaires telling us that empathy is not good.
Heidi, I've known her for right around 4 years now, and she is just absolutely brilliant. Her writing about the history of Russia, messing with our elections. She has incredible people to talk with us and teach us, like Craig Unger and Marcy Shore. Heidi was the one, maybe 2 years ago, who introduced the term to me, mega, which meant make empathy great again. So when she started that, I was just like, wow, that's really a good way to think of where we need to go as a country.
Yes, and she's also on the Radicalized Truth Survives podcast, the Rad Pod, along with Hi-Fi and Jim Stewartson, who we hope to have on this podcast someday soon. But Heidi is really a one in a million. So definitely check her out. Check out our episode 7 to be introduced to some of her amazing thoughts.
Yeah, I'm honored to call her my friend. On episode 8, we were joined by Mark Kerr, who is a technologist. He's a friend of Pamela's, but he came to us after watching episode 2 with Jen Senko and said to Pamela, I am Jen's dad, because he had become radicalized by Rush Limbaugh. So let's take a listen to what Mark had to say.
The more I research, the more I realize that I am too empathetic, sympathetic to human beings to be a good Republican these days. And I do believe in America, that we are the greatest country on earth still, and that in general we can do better than most countries, and we should do better than most countries. Sadly, we're not there at the moment, but perhaps in another year we will be.
Mark has been such a fun friend to have in these troubled times. He was inspired by the work that I was doing, and he came to me and said he wants to help out. And he is passionate about all of the wonderful topics that we talk about here. So we recruited him for a podcast episode and to have him share his story, because we honestly, with this podcast, we are hoping to reach people who might have been on the other side and maybe starting to question. And we are showing empathy to all of you. People like Mindy have helped me realize that it's not the end of the world if you voted for Trump even once, that you can change and become an empathy warrior like all of us, and recognize that compassion and community and empathy are all really wonderful things. And Mark was instrumental in that. And he sort of self-deprogrammed, but it was through his empathy and his understanding of the world that he realized that the path that he'd been kind of going down, he always said he was a right-leaning independent. He was never a ditto head, he made very clear. But he was, getting into those circles. And quite frankly, had he not seen the light several years ago, he probably would be full on MAGA at this point, because that was the path he was on. So wonderful to hear some insights from him, and really, really important episode for all of us.
Absolutely. Mark really showed us how powerful that the brainwashing is. For me, I am the granddaughter of an elected official. I am the granddaughter of a justice of the peace who married same-sex couples. But I was living in Texas in 2016, and they had me, a very engaged voter, convinced that my vote was not going to matter. So, yeah, it's a powerful thing, and for Mark to get through it and to come out the other side.
Yes. And helped, again, reinforce that not everybody's bad. Sometimes the MAGA people are just in a cult or in this bubble that they don't fully appreciate what they're doing. So
Yep.
hopefully we can all have compassion and reach them.
Yep. Empathy is our superpower, as we say.
Yes. For episode 9, we had a huge treat. The other original Empathy Avengers, or the other OG original gangsta Empathy Avengers, Spocko and Fred joined us for an episode to talk about truth in media. Something we probably have to do multiple episodes on this topic, but it was really refreshing. Fred was a CBS guy for decades as part of his career, and Spocko was like a PR media training guy for most of his career. So we were really, really blessed to have them both join us for this episode. So check out a clip from Fred.
Thing about digital advertising is that so much of it's an automated system. It's the ad exchanges now. So you really don't know what's going on. But part of the issue really for digital advertising is that it's a bit of a scam because basically I ran a digital media company for almost a decade. We were the main supplier of video news to the newspaper industry in North America, what's left of it. Sports Illustrated, for example, would come up with a big ad campaign. They say, we got $20 million to run Nike ads, and they only had 10 million impressions. So they would go to a bot farm and buy the other 10 million. And that's what happens in digital all the time now. So whereas with Nielsen in television and radio, there was a metric that they utilized, an agreed upon industry standard where they measured these homes and they knew what the actual number was or pretty close to it. There's no such thing, there's no corollary in digital. It's all smoke and mirrors, basically.
Fred is just so smart, and we get to hang out with him and Spocko almost every day and learn from their knowledge. And honestly, it's helped me present myself better on camera, probably. But the coolest thing about them is, after having your brain scrambled through cults or brainwashing or whatever, truth breaks through so quickly when you're offered it. Fred is definitely an avenger for truth, and I admire him so much for that.
Yeah. And I agree. I learned so much from both of them, like you said. And I think, especially in this episode, I really appreciated how Fred broke it down and allowed us to fully appreciate what is going on and the differences, how media had moved to more digital, and that introduces a whole new set of variables that are combating against truth. And so it's just hard to know what the metrics are. Like, what is your favorite show? Maybe Netflix only shows you what their most popular show is. We can't figure out, like, how does that track against ABC's network primetime programming? And the Nielsen ratings are no longer reliable because a lot of people are streaming shows now. And because Netflix and others are not being honest about the metrics, or there's no standardized way of reporting those metrics, it's really, really hard. And now with these new mergers and acquisitions, that could make it even harder. And as somebody who's in the entertainment industry, I really have empathy for those who have built a huge backlog of residuals, which is the pay that you get from having reruns shown of your shows and music videos and the like. And those people are probably not getting paid accurately anymore because those metrics are completely false. So having truth in media and understanding the media landscape and how you're being brainwashed is so important. And this episode is one to definitely not miss.
Absolutely. I mean, media literacy, knowing what is a good source or what is a bullshit one, it's essential in this environment because, like you said, the algorithm just, a bunch of numbers throws at you what it thinks you want to see. But it does get manipulated, and that is so important to be aware of. Episode 10 is with Karen Tamarius. She writes The Smart Politics Way on Substack. Karen is a political psychiatrist, which I'd never heard of before, but man, we need more of those. So take a listen to what Karen has to say.
One of the things I'd really like to see is for people to discover that place where they're no longer, it's me against you or my beliefs against your beliefs, but it's us against the problem. So you're working together to find solutions that work for both of you, which ultimately is what democracy is all about.
Yeah, what a refreshing episode, especially right in time for the holidays as we had to spend our time with our family. Sometimes we maybe don't want to, but it's really, really important to continue to keep those relationships going And even, she recommends, much to my chagrin, to keep the lines of communication going and to actually try to change their minds slowly but surely. She talked about planting seeds and nurturing them and watering them like a garden. So I thought that was a really, really great analogy for us to think about how going into 2026, we're still going to have all these problems. So we still need to communicate with our friends and family and just not completely agree to disagree, as I learned, but to start to plant the seeds and nurture them as we go.
Yeah, and that was just such a beautiful analogy from her. Because, it does take patience and time for a thought to grow. She gave me a lot of hope in the conversations that I have with people on the other side because she gave us 2 points. Number one, during that conversation, were you authentic in your beliefs and your standing on issues? And number two, are they still willing to have another conversation with you about it? So it's not a one and done. Karen really gave us hope for the long game. Like you said, we're going to need that in 2026. So everybody rest up.
Yes, absolutely. Check it out, episode 10.
Our 10 episodes for this year, we're so proud of them. We're so proud of the community that we're creating here with all of you. Something we're going to add to the Empathy Avengers podcast in 2026 is we're going to do a weekly live, probably on Sunday evenings, where we do our rants and raves of the week, where, both Pamela and I and all of our Empathy Avengers add to our show and just get it all out, the hoorays and the nays, and enjoy talking with each other about it.
Yep, it's something we do already anyway. We get on here and we have little mini therapy sessions for each other and commiserate and champion good things that are happening out there in the world. And so we want to just share that with all of you. So hopefully you'll be on board, and make sure you like and subscribe so that you can get all of the episodes as we roll them out next year.
So, you guys, thank you. We would not have gotten through this year without you watching us and cheering us on, both behind the scenes and right out in front. We just always want you to remember, kindness really is your superpower, and empathy saves the day.
The Empathy Avengers, where we put empathy into action.